Hey there, and welcome to Get Career Curious, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of different careers, how to get there, what the job is really like, and the stuff they don't put in the job description. I'm your host, Marita McCahill, and today we're diving into a career that's high intensity, high stakes, and full of surprises. Ever wondered what it's really like to be a cop? Not just what you'd see on TV, but the actual day-to-day life of a police officer? Well, you're in luck, because today I'm talking with Officer Megan Womack, who's been in law enforcement since 2019. When she's not out on patrol, she's a firearms instructor, department armorer, designated marksman, 40mm operator, Canine unit decoy, and more. Basically, she's a total badass. I've known Megan since she was in college, so watching her build her career in law enforcement has just been incredible. And today, she's giving us the inside scoop on what it takes to wear the badge. If you've ever thought about becoming a cop, this is the episode for you. Megan, welcome to the show.
Hello.
So did you always know you wanted to be a police officer? Did you grow up
When I
wanting
was
this
a
career?
little child, I definitely wanted to be a police officer. It was something I always wanted to do. And then I started watching the true crime TV shows like Criminal Minds and Bones and all those shows that involve police officers and investigations. And in college and high school, I was going through criminal justice classes and stuff that was surrounding the field. And it just kind of sealed the deal for me. I also wanted to be a vet, but then, I didn't want to see animals hurt or injured or dying. So I went the other route.
Yeah. So a service career was definitely in your future. So you went to college, and what did you study?
I did a dual major and I studied criminal justice and psychology. At my college, they made it super easy to get both degrees. So I ended up getting both a bachelor's in psychology and a bachelor's in justice.
What was your first job out of college like? Did you go straight to the police force, or did you have a break and then go?
So the way that policing works is that you apply to a specific department, and each department is going to have different requirements for a application process. We can talk about that a little later. But our police force that I am a part of they required 60 hours of credits. When I was in college, I didn't know exactly where I wanted to go for which side of law enforcement, if I wanted to go federal or if I wanted to go local. And there's two different types of local. There's county, which would be like the sheriff's department, or there's a city, which you would end up being a city police officer. So in college, I actually worked for the downtown Colorado College campus safety, and I worked with them for multiple years, and they actually hire police officers off duty in an extra duty capacity for things that they need extra security for. And getting to know all of the local police department people was how I ended up applying for the police department here.
How did you decide which of the services to go into? Which branch?
My uncle is actually a deputy chief for the Federal Reserve Police in Washington, D.C. And I talked to him quite a bit in reference to if I should go the federal route, the state route, or just staying local in the city. And ultimately, it's going to be down to every individual person, because if you go like the federal route, then you have to obviously go down to FLETC in Washington, D.C. and go through their academy there. But if you want to stay in a specific city, then the local or the county that you want to stay in would be probably the better bet to go to. I did not really want to move around. I liked where I lived.
Yeah.
I liked my friends, my people, my, hobbies that I do down here. My brother lives down in town with me, so I didn't really want to go to Washington, D.C. for 6 weeks to go through a class. So I ended up applying local, and it all just depends on where you want to be and the department that you want to work for. And then you kind of just go through whatever processes that they have. They're all very similar, but each place is going to have different requirements for what they want. Like I know, for example, some counties don't require any college credits at all. And then I know that require college credits. So is there are options for people who don't have
Yeah.
college credits to apply and be in law enforcement, but it just depends where you want to go and the pay and everything like that. So
What would you recommend to someone in high school had their heart set on going into law enforcement? What path do you suggest they follow for the maximum options?
So anybody can apply to law enforcement. You don't have to have specific degrees. You could literally have a theater degree and you could apply. It doesn't matter what
Okay.
college credits you have. The only thing I will say is that if you want to set yourself up for the best success in a law enforcement field is to deep dive into either criminal law, criminal justice, psychology, sociology, anything that deals with people and getting to know people. You don't have to have a law degree because, you go through and they end up giving you, here's what the Colorado revised statute says, and here's what you got to understand. But the thing that, people don't understand sometimes is that I don't have every state law memorized in my brain.
Yeah.
I have access to a book that has all the laws memorized, So
Right.
in my personal opinion, going to college for something that is people related, social services or service related would be your best option. There's tons of military that apply after the fact and they get accepted as well. But the best thing for people is to be able to communicate well and be adaptable to anything and everything that happens. And the best
Yeah.
degrees that you can go for are ones that have you talking to people.
Can you walk us through a typical day in your job?
Sure. So I will start off by saying that anything that you see on the TV is fake. Not anything like a normal day for law enforcement, specifically for a city police officer. So there's 5 different shifts. There's day shift, there's middle of the day shift, and then there's night shift. I have done 3 different shifts, all anytime after 2 p.m. is the start time. So for me, I show up to work. We get 20 minutes to put on our uniform and load up our cars that are in the parking lot because in my department, we don't get to take cars home. Some departments, you do get a take-home car, so you don't have to worry about that. And sometimes you deploy from your house, and that's where you start. But for me specifically, I work patrol, and I start my day off with 20 minutes of getting ready for the day, logging into my computer, making sure my body cam is working, making sure my phone is turned on, making sure all my emails are answered. And then we end up with a 20-minute lineup portion. So the lineup is everybody that's starting their shift at that specific start time. For me, it's 2 p.m. So anybody starting at 2 p.m. sits down in a room with a supervisor, usually a sergeant or a lieutenant if the sergeant's busy. And we have a 20-minute briefing session. So lineups can change any day. You never know what your lineup's going to be. It could be training videos. It could be doing scenarios in the substation. It could be discussing calls for service that we had the day before that were important to debrief. It could be anything from telling us, hey, you have this many policies that you've got to read and keep up to date with. So let's knock those out. And then what they do is they clear us by calling over the radio to our dispatch center. And then they say that we're in service. So at that point, we go out to our cars and we kind of wait and see what the day has for us. The nice thing about patrol is that every day is different and you don't end up with the same calls for service no matter what. Because a trespass can be a trespass, but you never know who the person is or what they're going to say to you and how you guys are going to interact moving forward. And then you're kind of just at the mercy of the dispatcher at that point.
Well, that sounds fun. Your job's not monotonous. What would people be surprised about the job that they maybe don't know about?
The egregious amount of paperwork that we have to do on every single call, no matter what it is. So anytime that we get in contact with somebody who is possibly considered like a suspect on a call, the state has mandated that we do contact cards for them so that they can keep track of everybody who is involved with the police in not necessarily like a negative manner, but in a investigatory manner. So if somebody's trespassing on private property and we go out and contact them, whether we give them a verbal warning that they are no longer welcome on the property, or we cite them into court for trespassing, or they have warrants or whatever it is. If we detain anyone in a investigation manner, we have to fill out a contact card. So that would be like a very basic call for service. If we go out on something insane, as far as like a traffic accident or a shooting or a domestic violence disturbance, something like that, the amount of paperwork that we have to do can take up to the entire shift. And some days people don't realize like a 6-car traffic accident could take me 10 hours to fill out the paperwork for.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They definitely don't show that on TV.
Not at all. No.
So what is your favorite part of your job?
I love all of the people that I get to interact with on a daily basis, and the fun things that you get to learn and see, and the people that you get to meet. Like, I would never, ever in my life walk into somebody else's house and play with their dogs and figure out who they are or see all the cool things that they've done in a different position. Like, if I show up to people sometimes on the worst days of their life and get to see their homes and learn about their past and what they've done and all the things that they are, excited to go do. I get to play with cute dogs all the time.
Yeah.
But it's different every single day, and you never have to sit at a desk and do repeat stuff. It's fun. You get to meet tons of people and learn tons of stuff that you would never learn doing, a job at a grocery store or whatever it is. So.
Yeah. So I know you love dogs, and you've done some work with the Canine unit because I've seen it myself. Can you talk about the Canine unit and how that's used and how that's a specialty within the force? It's pretty cool.
Sure. So I am what we call one of our canine decoys. I go out on Wednesdays and I assist our canine unit in training for their dogs. So that could be anything from hiding drugs in a building for the dogs, because it would be considered like a double blind exercise where the handler doesn't know where the drugs are. The dog doesn't know where the drugs are. Only I do. So then I can reward the dog when they do the right thing. Or I put on a big old bite suit and get chased around a building and end up getting, taken to the ground by these dogs that chase me. It could be anything like that. They also do muzzle work, which they put the dog on a muzzle. I don't wear a bite suit. And then the dogs find me and they ultimately try to bite me, but obviously I'm safe because they have a muzzle on. And that way they aren't getting fixated on only attacking people with a bite suit and actually attacking a person that is just wearing a t-shirt and jeans, So I've done that for about 4 years. I go out on Wednesdays and we try to make sure that the dogs are up to speed, that they're still getting all of their trainings. They are a specialty unit. So in order to get onto that unit, you have to apply. You go through this huge application process with a physical fitness test, a range test, and an oral board. Any specialty unit on the department has different requirements for what they want you to do in the application process. They're not all, physically fit and like range qualified. Sometimes it's just an oral board. But usually every single specialized unit that you apply for will look at your IA file and your report writing and any of the search warrants that you've done in your career to make sure that you would be like a better fit. So for Canine specific, you have to do a workout basically and show that you're up to snuff in order to be able to handle a dog. And everything that they have in their fitness test is applicable to running a, 75-pound Belgian Malinois on the streets and not having him just drag you around because, you're not physically fit enough. So I have applied a couple of times for that space. And once you get there, the dog obviously lasts for quite a while on the street with a handler. And so they don't, usually have a ton of openings there. And you kind of just have to make your dues for the years to come.
So what are some of the common misconceptions about your job that you think people should know about who are considering going into police work?
The biggest thing is that it's not all driving fast cars and chasing down bad guys and all of the cool stuff that you see on television. It's a lot of meeting people on their worst day and having to comfort those who have lost a loved one or, showing up on traffic accidents and all the paperwork, like I was mentioning earlier. A lot of people just think, oh, I get to drive down the interstate with my lights on to every call, which is not the case. So the biggest misconception, I think, is people, and it's been proven that some people will go through the entire academy and get out on the streets and then realize that it's not for them because they didn't know how much work it actually would be. And they show, on TV, they go from call to call to call and all this, but like some calls for service take your entire shift. And there's a lot of stuff that we do on the backside. Like if you pull over a car thinking it's just going to be a normal traffic stop and then the driver has warrants and then you see, illegal narcotic evidence in the car and then you search the whole car and then you have all this evidence to process. And the biggest thing is like some departments, all that patrol does is show up and then call out the detective units. And in our police department here, there's none of that usually. Like you show up and you handle service from beginning to end sometimes and don't call detective units out. Obviously, if it's something like horrible, like a shooting or a homicide or something, we would. But sometimes you end up pulling a traffic stop and you end up with like a felony level distribution for a illegal narcotics case. And it ends up taking a long time because you got to process the car and get all the evidence and process the drugs and put it all into evidence. And then you got to write the probable cause affidavit, which is just the paperwork that you submit to the jail that a judge would review after the fact to determine if it was a decent arrest, which all probable cause affidavits are reviewed by a cert and signed off on to say, yes, we do have probable cause to arrest this person for this crime. And so most people don't realize that you could get off at midnight like you're supposed to, or you could get off at 3:00 in the morning because you ended up pulling over a car 5 hours before your shift ended. And it took so long. No.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a surprise, but also super rewarding because you get to handle so much of it yourself. So, I mean, that's kind of a neat aspect as well.
Tell everyone that most local departments and even county departments will do like civilian ride-alongs. So if it's really something that they're considering before they apply for a department, they can always go and do a ride-along and see if it's something that they want to do from a perspective where they're in the car with a patrol officer or a deputy and they're seeing what a normal day would look like.
Oh, that is fabulous. That would be such a smart thing to do if you're pretty serious about pursuing this career is spend a day in the car with a police officer and see if it's for you or not. Yeah. How transferable is your job? Say for some odd reason you decided you wanted to move cross country. Is your job pretty transferable? I know you'd have to apply somewhere else and they would need someone, but a lot of your certifications can travel with you, correct?
That's correct. What happens when you go through an academy is that you become post-certified, which is just the police officer standard test, basically. That way, if I wanted to go anywhere in Colorado, I could apply to any department because I am already post-certified with the state of Colorado. Every state's going to be different on what they decide that they want for it's called lateraling to a different department. So you can lateral to a different department of any state, but they are going to have their own requirements on what they want for any kind of a lateral. So I know like we had some people who came in as a lateral from Las Cruces, New Mexico in my academy class. They had to go through the entire academy class just because they had to be post-certified with the state of Colorado. But if you ever decide that you're going to lateral somewhere else in a different state, you better be ready to go through an academy class again, because most of the time you have to like basically start over. The only thing is that when you lateral from a different department, you already have experience doing what you're doing. So your training after the academy is going to look a little different. So for example, for us, if you lateral from a different department, your PTO or police training phase on the streets after the academy is half of the time that it would be for somebody who just came out of college and went into the department. So like ours is 15 weeks on the street in a PTO phase, but a lateral is only 7.
Yeah, but it's still kind of a hassle. So you kind of want to know where you want to be when you're starting a career. Like, where do you want to settle roots a bit?
Yeah, and it's also important too, because in the academy, you have to get tased and pepper sprayed. So you have to decide if that's something you want to do twice.
How is the field evolving? Are you seeing any changes in terms of new technologies, or is AI having any effect on your day-to-day job? Or do you see it coming down the pipeline?
So it's actually kind of funny you bring that up, because this year we switched our body cams over to a different software service. And within that software service, there is an AI generated technology that is attached to our cameras. And it will actually write a majority of our reports for us, which ends up being very beneficial, because a call for service that used to take, 4 hours worth of paperwork is almost cut in half, because it's called draft 1, ends up pulling all the video from my camera and will make an 800 word document on. It's basically like writing a template for my report. And all I have to do is go back in, make sure that the information that it did generate is accurate, and then just fill in specific details of the rest of the report, which is super, super helpful, because it also pulls like direct quotes out of my camera, and it ends up saying like, Officer Womack was dispatched at this time and on this date, and she went to this call for service, and here's what speaker 1 said, here's what speaker 2 said, and here's what speaker 3 said. So I just have to go in and change speaker 1 over to Thally, speaker 2 to Dave, and speaker 4 to, Genevieve or whatever. So AI for us has been super helpful, because our reports are not taking as long. We can respond to calls for service.
That's a super way to cut down on probably one of your least favorite part of your jobs, which is paperwork, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So what do you think is the coolest part of your job that someone probably doesn't know?
Our job is fun, but the thing is that you can have tons of auxiliary duties or secondary duties on the department. People always talk about, the SWAT team and all this. Those are all secondary units. But in patrol, for me, and I've been in patrol since 2020, so I've been on the streets for 5 years on my own. The coolest thing is that you can have what's called auxiliary duties. So you can be a designated marksman, which is considered like like not a sniper like rifle on the streets, because that's usually just for SWAT, but it's like a designated marksman. So you go through additional training. Your rifle has a scope on it instead of, iron sights or a red dot sight or any kind of like additional. It's actually a magnified scope that you can use to like zoom in, and you use it as like an Overwatch kind of thing. The other things that are exciting is there's, different spots. Like I am also one of our firearms instructors for our department. So when I'm getting a little tired of running calls for service on the streets, I'll go down to the range and I'll help teach some of the recruits that are coming in on how to shoot, how to manipulate a weapon, and how to, be safe using cover if they're going to be engaged in any kind of a firefight or anything like that. But there's tons of additional things that you can do on the department that makes it so that it's not always the same going in, running calls, going home. It's kind of up to you on what you want to do. And you can apply for all these additional spots. You can apply for specialized units. And there's just tons of growth everywhere in the department, where you can go to homicide, you can go to crimes against children, you can go be a detective wherever you want. And then, you can promote to sergeants, lieutenants, commanders, deputy chiefs, chief, whatever you want to do. But there's just tons of movement in our department. There's plenty of things that you can do if you want to stay on patrol forever, that can change your day-to-day, work life.
So if you could do it all over again, are you pretty happy with your career choice? Or would you be like, I should have been a vet?
Again, I don't think I ever would have been able to be a vet. I really don't, because I love animals so much, and I just don't think I would be able to see them sick. It really depends on the day. Sometimes I'm just like, why did I ever become a police officer? But then you have, satisfying days where you actually can make a difference for somebody who, just was trying to end their life. And now they've decided that because of the conversation that you had, they no longer want to do that. Or, the field for law enforcement is so male dominated that in my shift, I'm the only female on my shift out of like 10 dudes. So when there's calls for service that say, this female victim requests a female officer if possible, it's nice to know that I am in this field because there are other women on the face of the earth that want a woman to come and take their statement. And there's a lot of people that are like, I didn't ever come forward because I didn't want to have to tell a man what happened to me, And so if I had to go back, I absolutely think I would have done it again the same exact way. Day to day, sometimes I'm like, I just want to sleep for 10 hours straight. And like, it's just hard. Yeah. And so it really just depends. And honestly, if you get into a good space with good people and good supervision, like you're going to be fine. If you don't and you decide you don't want to do it for the rest of your life, then, oh, well, what happens? You hit 5 years and you want to go do something else. You did, but at least you make a difference on a regular basis versus, somebody who sits at a desk all day and crunches numbers. Like they make a difference in their way, but I make a difference in my way. And sometimes it's better.
And as a community member, we are so grateful for you. So, and it's pretty awesome that you're a female, leading the charge. So I know your job is very tolling. Can you just share a little bit about some of your hobbies that are kind of fun that you do on the side?
Sure. So when I was in college, my mom was like terrified because I weighed like 105 pounds. So she told me that she wanted me to take like a self-defense class because I was this little tiny girl. And I was like, I'm going to go be a cop. And she was like, you don't even know how to protect yourself. So I actually, back in 2014, started in like the martial arts. So I started doing some Krav Maga and some judo. A couple years later, I started doing some Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So some of my favorite hobbies is that I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu on the side. I do that 2 to 3 times a week. Our department's actually switching over to jiu-jitsu, and I'm going to be one of the head instructors on that too. So that's pretty exciting. Yeah, I've got 2 dogs, and then I've also got some chickens and ducks that I have in my backyard. So I have that hobby, which doesn't usually take a ton of time, but I love animals, so I tend to do that often. I also deep dove into some sourdough bread making, so
yes,
I do that on the side. So I do all
that.
Megan
is a fabulous sourdough baker. Yeah,
everybody thinks it's so much work, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty great. I love doing that. I love teaching people how to do that. I also love reading. So anytime I can stay at my house alone in the quiet with a book, I'm happy to do that.
So one more question for you.
Sure.
If you could offer some career advice to someone in high school or in early college, just trying to figure out their path, what piece of career advice would you give to them?
My biggest advice is that if you are going for a degree, to go for a degree that has a service-related or people-related major. You do not have to have a bachelor's degree to apply to most departments. I always, always, always suggest going and doing a ride-along because if it's not for you, I don't want you to waste 6 months of your life going through an academy class and being stressed to the nines and to go through all of that. And then at the end of it, decide that it's really not for you because you just didn't really know what it was to begin with. But the biggest piece of advice that I have is to make sure that you have a solid support system. Because if you don't have a solid support system, then it's just going to be so hard to get where you want to be and to be able to do shift work alone. My parents and my family are very supportive of what I've always wanted to do, but I really don't think that you can do it without having the support system to back you up because it is hard. Like going out there and being spit on or beat up or yelled at by people either on their worst day or by people who are just bad people is hard to go through. And if you don't have that support system, then you're not going to make it. So just make sure that you really, really think about if this is something that you want to do And they start your academy class like week 1. They say like, hey, this job is not for everyone. And if any point you decide that it's not for you, you should do it in the academy. Because if you consider how long you're in the academy and all the gear and everything, it takes a lot of money to get somebody through the academy. And for them to just quit right afterwards is kind of frustrating for other people who are already on the department, who are expecting, 40 recruits to come out onto the streets to help backfill some of our staffing and make it easier for everybody. And then they leave. So definitely make sure that you are pursuing some kind of service-minded degree in college. Have a good support system that can back you up, and make sure that you do a ride-along before you apply, because it is definitely not for everybody.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And thank you for sharing your knowledge. And thank you for your service. You're super brave. And Megan, you really are truly a badass. My kids love Megan.
I love your kids.
Well, thanks for being on.
Yeah, of course.
Appreciate it. Thank you for joining us today. Our goal is to help listeners discover meaningful careers that bring them joy and purpose. If you have a friend who is considering going into law enforcement and might benefit from today's discussion with Megan, please share this episode with them. Want even more career insights? Subscribe to this podcast and join our community at getcareercurious.com for exclusive content and behind-the-scenes access of this podcast that you won't find anywhere else. Thank you again for joining me, Marita McCahill, in this episode of Get Career Curious. I'll see you next time.